Welcome to another edition of Your Impact Attack. That's right, it's Your Impact Attack, and we're holding on to it for you. And who is we? Well, I am Jamie Williams, also known as the Vet in some circles, and with me, as always, my tag team partner, Brandon. Boom, there's the tag. Brandon, what's up?
Not much, man. It was a big week for Impact. Very noteworthy Slammiversary, at least for them.
At least for them. Not much for anybody else, I guess. Yeah, another one of those weekends where there was like all this wrestling. And I'm like, couldn't you have saved some of this wrestling for like the week before when nothing was happening or the week after when nothing's really happening? There's just too damn much wrestling. They just pile up, and they save it for like one weekend. I don't know what the deal is. I really wish the companies would, if the companies aren't going to like coordinate as far as talents and stuff are concerned, could they at least give each other a phone call and be like, hey, can you move this to next weekend? We got something going on, or we'll move this or that. Like, come on, you guys gotta spread out your events better. So
In my opinion, what I think it is like I think they understand that all companies get that they're drawing from the same fan base, so it's like, all right, they're just going to go what they want to go to.
stop it.
I know. I mean, I'm not justifying it. I'm trying to figure out what's going through their heads.
In the words of former governor and kindergarten cop star Arnold Schwarzenegger, stop it.
Put the cookie down.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a different movie. I'm sorry.
Well, that's Jingle All the Way, which is another great movie. Basically, every movie with Arnold is great in its own way because it's got Arnold in it. If you haven't checked out the three-part little documentary Arnold on Netflix, it may not have like a lot of new stuff for Arnold fans, but it's interesting to sit and watch him comment on his own life. So, as a side note, check out that Arnold on Netflix. Pretty interesting. But speaking of interesting, we got some interested people here doing now. Yeah. We got some interesting people here watching us. The C of the VBC. Who do we have with us so far?
Let's see who we got hanging with us right now. We got our boy Lab Rat. We got Javi Uchida, Jerome Hall. What is up? We got Elizabeth as always, and Darkside Caster joining us for tonight. What is up?
That's right, Darkside Caster. We've recruited him from the Next Level Wrestling Review and some of my Twitch streams. He's a very cool guy, popping in, saying hello, supporting us, and everything like that. So we appreciate him and everybody else that shows up, and we'll probably get a few more as the time goes on. You know who I miss is Hatebot. You know,
Yeah.
he hasn't been around lately ever since he changed his schedule. So we're not getting as much of him.
Well, to be fair, I mean, Vince is back at work. He kind of needs his hate bot. I mean, not a lot of time in the day for the guy.
Yeah, I understand. Speaking of not a lot of time in the day, you know, like I said, we got all this wrestling, but I'm looking at the news, and I don't really see a lot. I once again was part of the Monday locker room, and there wasn't a hell of a lot of news to talk about. But if there was, you can check that out. Channelattitude.com, Monday Locker Room. Myself, Ben Hameen, going over the news of the day. But looking at Impact news, it seems like all the news is coming out of Slammiversary. So, you know, normally we chit chat about things like that, and I guess that's probably just going to happen as we go over Slammiversary itself this time. But are there any other news headlines, maybe outside the world of wrestling, that you wanted to comment on, or?
Honestly, not a whole lot going on, other than just, you know, stuff we're all trying to escape from.
That's right. Well, the one thing you can't escape from is that they're going to just put on wrestling shows, and we are going to review them for you. And I guess we might as well just get right into it. But before we get into the new stuff, we need to punch up the old stuff, right?
Yep. Yes. I got the one from, let's see what it was, the 6/29/23 edition of Impact Wrestling.
Okay. So that was the missing one
Correct.
from the previous week, right?
That is correct. Unfortunately, today a lot of more family stuff came up that I had to take care of, so I apologize. But that one will be up sometime this week.
Okay. Well, better late than never, as people say. And I guess we can go back and back how far back in time and look at these these punch ups that you had for that couple of weeks ago. Let's get into it.
All right, so this is the one where we opened up with. Actually, let's go ahead and get right into it. So we're going to do the recap, catch up package, intro, pyro, and ballyhoo. Throw it to the announce table, go over the card for the night, and go give their thoughts on recent developments. And we'll open up with the same match, Chris Sabin versus Trey Miguel, except this time Sabin goes over clean, and then Wentz runs in to attack Sabin, while Trey joins in for a Rascals reunion. And when Shelley runs out, he comes out with a chair. So the Rascals actually have a reason to bail because none of them wants to get hit with that.
Gotcha.
And we cut
because last week, the last time, what was different about that, if you didn't catch it, was that they just randomly had a guy interrupt the match. Zachary Wentz interrupted the match to reunite with his partner, but the match wasn't over.
It was an X Division title match, and he gave his partner the DQ and cost him the belt. Kind of fixing that little thing.
Yeah, so it's like, huh? But yeah, there you go.
All right, so then we go to our replay of last week, and Moose helped Myers in good hands, and then we have the same pre-tape that we saw on the show. Then we cut to our first commercial break. Come back with Motor City Machine Guns in Santino's office, where Shelley wants a match with Wentz in the main event, which Santino books. Then you go backstage to the same Rascals promo we saw earlier, where except they actually add the material of Shelley and Sabin and then put over the main event coming up later tonight. Match 2, Kylan King versus Masha Slamovich. Goes out just like it did on the show with Kelly running out, and they basically officially form their union.
Okay, I got it.
And then we have our replay of Swinger and Dice on BTI and then go to the backstage segment with Swinger, Dice, and referee Daniel Spencer that plays out like it did on the show. Then we cut to backstage show a shot of Nick Aldis arriving before we go to commercial.
What's he arriving in? Something classy, I imagine.
Well, of course.
Lincoln Navigator.
Lincoln
Range Rover? He's British. Range Rover?
Ooh, actually, I like the Lincoln Navigator.
Okay. Let's go with that.
All right, and then we go to the backstage segment with Edwards, Kazarian, and Alicia. Edwards tries to explain he didn't mean to kick Kazarian. Kazarian blows him off and calls him a liar and says he spit on the grave of Kowalski. And then as Kazarian walks away, Edwards attacks him from behind, and then it just leads to a brawl.
Poor Kowalski's grave.
And then match number 3 is Leo Rush versus Jack Price. And basically just Rush going over like he did on the show. Then we cut to backstage of the Motor City Machine Guns locker room where Gia enters, asks Shelley to give his thoughts on Wentz's return in tonight's main event. He mentions how everybody wants to make their name off of the Motor City Machine Guns, and he'll put the Rascals down tonight.
Okay.
And then we go to our third commercial break and then come back with the Scott D'Amore package. Much more condensed version of what we saw on the show. And then D'Amore and Gia, much more condensed version of what we saw on the show, as well as with the good hands getting themselves in the match with PCO.
All right.
And then we go to match number 4, Jay Vidal versus Trinity. Jay music and entrance, Trinity music and entrance, and it goes just pretty much like it did on the show with Deanna running out and taking her time to get in. And then we cut to backstage in Aldis's locker room. Gia enters and asks Aldis if he's going to watch the Shelley and Wentz match. Aldis says he'll be watching closely. Go to our fourth commercial break.
And he's also like, "What are you doing in here, Gia? Get out of here. I'm changing."
Mickey's she's injured. That should be all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, I'm just kidding.
She doesn't watch the show.
And then you go to our fourth commercial break and then come back with the Dango vignette, same one that we see on the show because that was just such a great vignette. And same pre-tape with Santino because, again, he did a great job with that. We're not changing that. And then match 5, Yuya Uemura versus Kenny King with Sheldon Jean. Kenny King music and entrance, Yuya Uemura music and entrance. Match goes like it did on the show. And then Joe Hendry comes out, plays the same Stripper Kenny video. And then we go to backstage, locker room, where Chris Sabin is found laid out. Don't know who did it.
My goodness.
And go to our 5th commercial break, come back with a New Japan hype video, cut it to the announce desk, and run down the card for next week. And we do an in-ring with Nick Aldis music and entrance, and he cuts the same promo that he did on the show. Then we have Shelley music and entrance. He cuts the same promo on the show, and he accuses Aldis of taking out Sabin. Aldis denies it, as the exchange continues like it did, like we saw on the show, and then Aldis takes a seat at the broadcast table, and Shelley gets in the ring for his match. And then we have our main event, Zachary Wentz music and entrance. Miguel causes DQ finish. Rascals double team Shelley. Sabin hobbles out with a weapon. Leo Rush runs in to take out Sabin while Rascals beat down Shelley. Aldis stands up from the announce table, and his body language and facial expressions show that he might have been the one who set all of this up himself as we go off the air.
How mysterious. How intriguing. I would just have to tune in next week to see what happens. Society Review says Chris Sabin is still alive. Not only is he still alive, he's better than ever. He's Goldberg 98, as we like to call him around here. It's a nickname we've given because it's pretty damn hard to go over on him. Except, lately, it's been more like Goldberg 2000. So but he's having a good run there for a little bit.
It's like Leo Rush has become Kevin Nash and Scott Steiner at the same time.
That's right. And that's hilarious when you see Leo Rush, but we're just talking, metaphorically and proxy. Yeah, Goldberg 2019. Yeah, could be. No, he's still better than that. He's still better than that. Well, I don't know. Well, whatever. I mean, the point is, it's ridiculous. What Chris Sabin's doing at this point in his career, but that's what you have when you have your longtime friends running the company for you. It's no different. And we're all we can talk about it all we want. We all know we'd be putting our friends over if we were in charge of things. That's kind of what we do. You get the people that you can trust or whatever. But I don't know. You would think Impact would be a little bit different because they got loyal people there that are much bigger stars, looking like. Then yeah, had a moose in my throat. Yeah, just things like that. Like he's proven his loyalty, make him the guy. So. Motor City Machine Guns lasted longer than the city of Detroit. Yeah. Well, they're both still around, but they're both still kind of embarrassing. I think that's the point. But anyway, don't take our word for it. They'll tell you that they're great and they've been great, and that the reason that wrestling's even around anymore is because of them. If you go by what they say. Let's get into the Impact that was the go home for Slammiversary. And talk more about how great this Motor City Machine Guns are.
That's one thing that's really kind of confused me. There's nobody there that's going, hey, the way we're presenting the Motor City Machine Guns, they're kind of coming across like arrogant, cocky douchebags.
Yeah, is that how you want it? Is that what are they doing this on purpose? Because it's weird. We'll talk more about it as we go on, but.
Yeah, because again, going back to that Nick Aldis promo that he cut on Alex Shelley, he came across as the babyface. Everything he said was justified, and then the way Alex Shelley was behaving just furthered it.
Right. I mean, if you have a British accent, you can naturally come across as a dick. So it's like, even when you're speaking the truth, you could just be a heel just because you're in America speaking the truth. But still, like, they're both, it's almost like they're both trying to play the same role and just let the crowd just be like, well, because you're supposed to cheer for this person, you cheer for this person, not because you want to or because you're compelled to. It's just, this is what we're telling you. Like, okay, but
and then seeing like all this and Shelley together, it's just clear like all this is up. He's another level.
Yeah, I agree. But again, we'll get to that. So this was the Impact that took place on, what day was it? July something.
July 13th.
July 13th. Yes. And we're going to open with a recap that we usually do. And this time they include some clips from the Busted Open radio show where they're trying to run the angle with, Scott D'Amore, because they have Diener come on and say he should be Bully's partner since Macklin can't do it. Diener's campaigning to be the partner and putting himself in there. So they're showing clips from the show where you just see like Mark Henry just sitting there, Dave LaGreca just sitting there while they're trying to run this angle. So what do you think about, this is an interesting question for you. What do you think, and the chat can answer too. What do you think about when a company tries to run a kayfabe angle that's obviously phony on a show that normally it's like, this is behind the scenes, this is the real talk, this is, like we sit here, we tell you about Impact every week, right? We talk about it, we just break things down from a industry perspective and what we think would be different. Now, if we came on here and I had to have a match with Ben Hameen at some indie show, and then we came on here and started cutting fake promos on each other on Impact Attack, and then go on Monday Locker Room and cut a promo on him and do this, run this angle where everybody knows after we've been exposing the business, talking to each other back and forth for however many weeks, months, years now. And then all of a sudden I expect you guys to think we have real heat and I'm cutting wrestling promos on Ben Hameen, like the equivalent of that. What do you think about the way they do that on things like Busted Open, where they spend the whole time exposing the business and talking about it from the inside, and then they try to run angles on it? What do you think about that?
It's too different. Like, you cannot have those two on the same show. Like, if Impact had their own podcast that was kayfabe, went over this up on the show, had people, had wrestlers, had other personalities on there to talk about what's going on in the show, that is where you would do something like that.
Yeah. A recent example would have been, for the Ric Flair's last match thing, when he's trying to do that shit with Jeff Jarrett, and pretend that they don't like each other on the My World podcast. Like, come on, you're on the same episode, you're acting like you're mad at each other while you're talking about matches that you had with Ric Flair in the past and how those were phony and the behind the scenes aspect of them. So you just said that the shit was fake, and then now you're trying to get me to buy your pay-per-view by acting like you really beat him up in a parking lot somewhere. There's got to be a separation somewhere. We all know what wrestling is. Right. But you don't have to beat people over the head with the phoniness of it and make them roll their eyes,
Yeah, the only thing they should have talked about, like with the Ric Flair's last match on the Jeff Jarrett show, they should have just promoted it. That's it. Just don't try to sell the angle. Just promote the show. Yeah,
I agree. Well, Society Review says it might be interesting if more than 100,000 knew it was happening. How many people actually listen to Busted Open? Probably more than 100,000 people. Like, probably a lot of people listen to Busted Open. I have no idea how many, but if you're talking in terms of, there aren't that many Sirius XM wrestling shows, I would think. So that's usually the one that you hear about the most. And it's got the most consistent, I guess if you want to say star power. Because you always have either Bully, Tommy Dreamer, Mark Henry, got Tony Khan as a rotating guest, to promote things, which causes conflicts of interest sometimes. Which that was funny too. Recently they had Vince Russo on Busted Open, but they wouldn't let him stay for the Tony Khan part, so that was funny. You just shit like that.
And for real, like those two on the same podcast actually talking with each other.
Right. Well, this is what happens, man.
Tony, he needs to be challenged.
They don't want to be challenged. They want to just have their fun. And I get it too. Like, it wouldn't see. Now, here's the thing.
He's a billionaire living his dream, and because he can afford to.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, if you can afford to do anything, go ahead and pretty much do it. within reason, of course. I'm not advocating you do whatever you want, literally, but if you want to start a wrestling company and everything, you have millions of dollars, billions of dollars, you have all the right in the world to do it. But
I mean, and it gives the boys another place to work and get a payday.
right, and I'll always love Tony for that, and for the 9 days from tonight promo, which is the best promo ever cut.
9 days.
Yeah, he'll always be over with me for that. You can't. I'm sorry, he'll have to do a lot to get me to turn on him after that. But I mean, the point is, if you want to interact with these guys that you've never met, maybe you just don't trash them and insult them, for months and years and stuff before you have the opportunity to speak to them, and then maybe they would speak to you. But that's the Russo has clearly drawn his line in the sand, how he wants to do things and how he wants to talk about people, and he's welcome to do that. He's got his own platform. We're on it. So it's like, I don't disagree with that, but you then cannot turn around and be surprised that nobody wants to talk to you when you've spent all your time insulting them.
Although, to be fair, basically anything that's not telling Tony Khan how great he is, he takes as an insult. I mean, don't forget the time that when him and Bully had that conversation, and Bully just straight up, like, it wasn't disrespectful, it wasn't insulting. He's like, how can you have, like, these tag matches and nobody's using the tag rope? It completely, like, destroys what you're trying to sell.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair, but also, to be fair, is that the only thing that when Bully Ray has a chance to talk to him, is that the thing he needs to bring up? Like, that's the problem? That's the problem in AEW? The tag ropes? That's the problem. There's a lot bigger problems than that. So it's just, I don't know. Who cares? Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about this episode of Impact here. We have our newly returning Zachary Wentz versus Chris Bay in a singles match. Here's a question. Does anybody know the meaning of this thing? If you're listening on audio only, I'm doing putting the fingers under the chin.
I actually know exactly what that's from.
What is that from?
The 1993 Little Rascals movie.
Okay, so that's what it's a reference to.
Yep.
Okay, I knew it was a reference to something that I didn't get, but is that actually a Little Rascals thing, or did they just do that for that movie?
That I
do that back in the old ass shorts and stuff like that?
That one I do not know. I never saw the old one, but yeah, I do remember they would do that as like their own version of like a middle finger gesture.
Okay, well, Wentz is doing that constantly throughout this whole match, including, like the opening part where they lock up and he backs him into the corner, and he climbs up on the turnbuckle and gets in his face and just starts doing this right in his face and like pushing it in. It's like, bro, can you not
scale it back?
Yeah, I get it. You want to do the thing, but just a little less is more, maybe, is usually that's usually what that phrase would apply to here if you're doing something stupid.
Yes.
So are they heels now? Yeah.
Yes, Rascals are heel. They're
heels. They're not about having fun. They're sinister, mischievous guys. I don't fucking know. I really don't. Trey Miguel's been a heel for a while. But yeah, so anyway, they have a match. Trey does the jump up, which eventually causes Zach to win. He hits his move. It's LA Knight's move, whatever that move is called, where you do a face plant sort of. How do you describe it? What does LA Knight call it? Somebody in the chat, maybe? I forget. It's just he grabs you like he's going to give you like a cutter or something, and then he like you fall forward and take, Chris Bay takes a great bump on it. He lands directly on top of his head like he got spiked in the ground, and then flips over. So, but yeah, that's what it is. It's the LA Knight move, or whoever invented it. I don't know. And there you go. So now we've got some intrigue leading up, because this is going to play into a little bit later in the show and a little bit on the pay-per-view. So, Brandon, what did you think of this?
The only notes I have is how many actual pinfall attempts were there? And it looks like someone else on the roster is sick.
Sick.
And then where they lost me is the complete no-sell kicks to the face. Like you had one dude kick another dude in the face, shake it off, kick the other dude in the face, shake it off, come back off the ropes, hit another move. That'll never. That it always gets me. Like, doesn't make any sense.
Well, add that to the list. Zach is dating Gigi Dolan now, which proves that after his firing from WWE, his taste in women hasn't improved at all. Well, physically it might have. I mean, he's not just dating like like an overweight Applebee's waitress anymore. So that's good. He's moved on to a more exotic like giraffe-like person. So just a little bit of on BTI. Now this is. I want to remind everybody that a man was immolated last week on on this show after they poured battery acid down his throat. But on BTI here, Dango made a derogatory comment about Santino's daughter and Santino. He said, "You're a bitch just like your daughter," or whatever he said. And then Santino gets up from the commentary desk and security is there to restrain him. So they had 2 security people to restrain the guy that's probably in charge of security since he's the director of authority. They had two guys to restrain the director of authority, but it was okay to almost kill a man on TV last week, and no one was around to help.
Oh, and Dango could take a shot at him, and while he's restrained, and nothing happens to him.
I'm sorry, I just read Steve Egger's comment. Shout out to Steve Egger to the chat. He said, "I dated a chubby Applebee's waitress." No, wait, it was a chubby Toys R Us cashier. Well, that's a joke for 2 people here. But it's great. But at least he got a GameCube out of it, so Okay. Yeah, so definitely there you go. So Santino, can't control his own security force or let him. And then by the way, while he was being restrained, Dango hit him with a cheap punch, and laid him out. So that was, whatever. It's just the inconsistencies of things. It'd be fine if you had security all over the damn show. Like, security should be a character on the show, and they should be making more appearances than any of the wrestlers because of all the illegal shit that everybody's doing at all times.
Yep. Where is the security to pull Dango away too? It should have been there for both of them.
Right. Yeah, it's the classic, we're going to pull apart these guys, but we're only going to pull apart one of them. The other one can get free shots. Yeah. All right.
That never made sense. It never made sense.
So as Santino is recovering from this punch, he's backstage or whatever. And then the Rascals come in and say, "Hey, we won that singles match. So that basically means we get a tag team title shot, huh?" And he's like, "No, get out of here." I'm paraphrasing for time, but yes, they basically do not get a title shot just because they won a singles match. And he saw them cheat to do it, which he also points out. So, there you go.
Which again, that's a dangerous thing to tread on. It's like, okay, if you're going to do it for this story, like do the thing where you have an officials watching the matches, for this storyline and for this storyline, you got to do it across the board.
I just think that if you were consistent with everything that you did, you would change the way you write your show because you'd realize, hey, wait a minute, we have like 20 segments where security has to come out. You know what I mean? Like we got to stop. We got to scale it back. Again, this is a problem. It's not Impact's problem. It's wrestling's problem. Wrestling is facing, like, in some ways they're growing their audience. In other ways, they're losing some audience. Like, even if TV ratings don't matter as much anymore, obviously Impact is not living and dying by the people that are watching on Access TV. They've got other revenue streams that are keeping them in business, right?
Plus, they own Access TV.
Yeah, that too. That helps. But here's the thing. You still want to increase your viewership however you can, right? Well, one of the and certainly you want people to purchase Slammiversary for money. So you're asking people to buy wrestling matches, and you're selling them the wrestling matches by using fights and murder. Like you're having backstage fights, you're having fights out after the bell, you're having guys kill other guys, you're having guys kidnap people, you're having all this other stuff going on, and then when you buy Slammiversary, all you get are straight wrestling matches. That's backwards. You should have to pay for a kidnapping. You should have to pay for somebody getting set on fire. You should have I'm not saying you should do those things, but I'm saying what you're using. If I've gotten the fire murder for free, why do I need to pay you $30 to watch a wrestling match?
Those are supposed to be the spectacles you pay for.
Yes. It
Where's
just doesn't,
Stephanie?
Yeah. So here I am. I'm at home and I'm watching Impact on Access TV. I'm not, but just for the sake of argument, you're watching this and then you see all this shit and then you hear the pay-per-views coming up and be like, well, I'll just read the results and save the money. Since all is going to be is matches, I just need to know if anybody, lost a title or whatever. It's just, I don't know. Yeah. Society says the biggest flaw of the pandemic era was the fact that wrestling kept everything backstage instead of branching out to the outside world for segments. They couldn't even keep it interesting within their own building. I mentioned this on the Monday Locker Room today. I'm saying and I've said it before multiple times, the WWE got exposed because they kept trying to act like they're bigger than a pro wrestling company or they're above just regular wrestling. And then when they had a chance to prove that they make movies, pal, all they did was have matches in empty buildings. It was just straight matches in empty buildings for however many months, a year.
There was so much opportunity for them to go outside their creative envelope and come up with something and do new things, things you couldn't do with fans in an arena.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what did they prove? They proved they don't have that creativity. They don't have an envelope. They don't have shit. They got matches, and they're still doing it now. They just, if they need a segment to go long, they just have the match go longer. They book more matches. They put more recaps in if they have to. They have 100 and some. They have 200 people they could use on television, and instead they're dragging out matches and putting in recaps instead of using multiple people in shorter segments. It's just. Everybody could have a spot on Monday Night Raw with those 3 hours, but instead it's the same 10 people over and over and over and over and over again, multiple times throughout the night. Yes, they are the biggest stars, but I'm just saying, you got more people that are sitting around not getting used and you're paying them. So if that's an effective use of your money, And it's the same thing with Impact. They got more people even than they use on these shows.
There was somebody who I don't know who it was, they made a great point one time. They said, as great as Austin was, would that show have been as great if he didn't have such a great supporting and backup cast?
Probably not. But even so, that was a good example of how you could use people, multiple people, but you still had Austin on the show sometimes 3-4 times, but you still had everybody else too. It was granted they had less people then, but still. I'm sure if they had more people to use, they would have reformatted it to fit more people in. Or if Russo and Ferrara had gotten a third hour on Raw, they would have accommodated that by using extra people that they had. That's the difference. The WWE is trying to kill time, not fill time. They're trying to kill it. And that's different than, actually actively trying to, utilize the tools that you have at your disposal. It's like trying to build a house with a hammer only. There's other tools you need to use, but you can't build everything with just a hammer. So
yeah, you gotta have nails and wood too.
Yeah. So speaking of wood, we get Shelley, Alex Shelley, and we get it's a package for Shelley and all this. It's focusing more on Shelley here, and he's very heelish in this. I thought.
Yeah,
It was
the term I used for Alex Shelley on this was arrogant loudmouth.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if you're self-aware, okay, we can see where are we going with this. But if you're just doing this thinking you sound cool and you're not, I'm not sure. Like, I'm really not sure. I'm honestly not sure, because I usually in wrestling, even if I disagree with it, I can see where they're going. I can't see this. So either they're geniuses or and they're going to blow us all away, or they're just doing a bad job of trying to, you know, be a fan favorite. I don't know, but let's go on. It's Kevin Knight versus Mike Bailey. These guys have a match. What'd you think of the match?
I just did not get the feeling that they were trying to convince me that they were trying to win this. It just felt like two guys showcasing what they could do. At the very least, Bailey, probably more than anybody that I've seen, does at least a decent job of protecting his finish. Like, I don't think I've ever seen anybody kick out of that yet.
I swear somebody did. Probably like Josh Alexander or something. But
That might
I
have,
tell you.
yeah, like during that 60-minute match, that might have been the only time, which would have been an acceptable time for that to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I would never do it, but.
And I'll never forget, like the one comes to mind is there was one time when Triple H was defending the title against Spike Dudley, and he kicked out of the acid drop, which again makes sense with where those two are at on the card and where they're positioned at.
I think it can be a good. I don't advocate using this often, but I think in a case like that, especially with like a Spike Dudley and a Triple H, if you start the match with it, I would think that would be one time where you could do it for a big falsie, because you haven't taken any other moves. You know, when you hear people talk about, oh, they do all this shit and you know, they do all these crazy moves to each other and then win with a roll up, which I agree is not good from an artistic standpoint. Like, you could do things better than that. However, if you want to be 100% realistic, the idea being that it's an accumulation, right? Like, if you hadn't hit the guy with 10 pile drivers, he could have kicked out of that roll up, but it was the final roll up that did it. And obviously, if you hit an 11th pile driver, you probably would have pinned him too. I think that's the psychology of it. I'm not saying it's good, but there is, you know, a logic to it. So it's always better to get a clean finish, I would think. I'd much rather be knocked out by a guy than rolled up by a guy, or to even tap out to a guy. But nonetheless, there are times when you need to get rolled up by a guy, or you need to tap out to a guy, because you have to keep those finishes over. But the idea of kicking out of finishes, it's not so much about the kicking out of the finish. It's about the accumulation of things that you've taken up to that point. At some point, enough has to be enough and your body just gives out. So that's why those things happen. But if you were to start the match with a guy's finish, well, of course, you know, if nothing else has happened to him, he has a chance to recover from it. You can't, you know, you can't go from full power to knocked out in one move. You know what I'm saying? So
that makes all the sense in the world.
Right. And so yeah. But anyway, this match though, they did a lot of stuff. Kevin Knight, very athletic, you know, showing lots of the things that he can do that we've seen him do before. You know, like jumping up and grabbing guys off the top rope with a Rana, or, you know, those type of things. Very, very high jumper, Kevin Knight. So unfortunately, this is not track and field. This is pro wrestling, and Mike Bailey hits the ultimate weapon and puts him away finally. So interesting. And they had an opportunity to do something else interesting, but you didn't really see it. We'll talk about that later. So pretty much you already gave your thoughts on this. Any final thoughts before we move on?
I wish they, if they're gonna use Knight, do something more with him. Like, give him more of a character, put him more of an angle rather than just a guy who's there to put guys over.
Okay. And oddly enough, this would be the last night of a set of tapings. Like these were like recorded on, like, I want to say June 24th or something like that. I remember hearing that, like, these were the matches that were taped on that date. So that means he was probably sitting around, because I don't remember seeing him the other shows on the taping. So he just sat around and was only used on the final day.
That actually brings up a question. Were these tapings before or after the Australian tour?
I would have thought they were before.
So I noticed that Macklin didn't wrestle in any of them, did he? He just did the angle where he set PCO on fire with Bully.
Yeah, I think that's it.
So yeah, I think
he did wrestle. He did wrestle at the Australian tour because he had that rematch with Shelley,
and that's where he got injured. It was in Australia.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, then we get a Masha and Kelly vignette next. Thoughts on this sexy vignette?
Very sexy.
I agree, if you're into that sort of thing. All right, now Joe Hendry's going to come out. He's very concerned for stripper Kenny, and he introduces Uemura, and we get a tag team match with Joe and Yuya versus King and Jeans. Kenny wrestled with a pullover hoodie on because he's trying to cut, and it comes off, and at some point during the match, the hoodie comes off, and he covers his titties and leaves. And Sheldon's left to get the standing ovation from Joe Hendry, and that's the finish. So, stripper Kenny is now prude Kenny.
I had originally did not like the finish. I thought the wrong team went over until Slammiversary, and it's like, okay, now this makes sense why the faces went over.
Okay. A little foreshadowing there for everybody. So other than that, you didn't care for this finish at the time, though, is what you're saying.
Correct. I thought Kenny King should have went over and got heat on Hendry going into the pay-per-view, especially after Hendry's kind of gotten the better of him the last few weeks. It's kind of Kenny's turn to get a little bit of heat on him.
Yeah. All right, so we're finding a little something to do with Yuya. I don't know how much longer he's got in the States, but whatever he does, I'm sure he's learning a lot, maybe even about what not to do. But definitely getting some experience and some reps. These are some good guys to work with, I think, except for maybe Sheldon Jean. I think Sheldon Jean's probably less experienced than even Yuya at this point. So good experience and reps for Sheldon too. And then we do a flashback to Slammiversary 2013. So 10 years ago. Goldberg 98 wins Ultimate X. Yay. Is this what does this mean? Why are we foreshadowing something? Are we just putting Chris Sabin over? I don't know yet.
Another person in that match was Kenny King.
That's true. He wasn't that. Society thinks there are too many people in wrestling named Kenny. So maybe. Don't forget, there's not only are there too many people named Kenny in wrestling, but don't forget that Eddie Edwards' kendo stick is also named Kenny. So even an inanimate object is named Kenny in wrestling.
And Alicia's is Kendra.
Ooh. But how many Kendras are there in wrestling?
True.
All right. Leo Rush vignette. I like this, as usual. Leo Rush is good.
I love his character stuff. I think he's a great character.
He has a way of telling stories, I think, with his promos, where even if you always listen to him and you're like, where's he going? And he usually gets there in a satisfying way, but you want to keep listening to him. So I thought this was good. It did have music underneath, but that's fine. It's a pre-produced vignette. This is like something you would make on your own and send in, and it actually makes sense.
Right.
Whereas other times, it's not like you filming a crime and sending it in and letting Impact play it. This is, something they would actually use.
Or Gia coming up and interviewing you, and then there's music playing underneath like it's supposed to be live, but it's putting music in.
which is what happens because right after they play this vignette, Saban is standing there with Gia and no music underneath. And he basically just lists all the titles he's won. I mean, I don't really know how else to describe his promo here. It's just him putting himself over by way of titles won. So, great job. And yes, Society reviews Eddie Edwards is still fat. So, yeah. Then we get Moose and Myers versus Swan and Sammy. All right. So this is our one Moose sighting here. So as long as we get a full Moose entrance on the show, I'm always usually a pretty happy camper. They have a good, decent little match here, I would say. Not remembering much about it. Eventually, Moose hits a low blow and a spear on Sami Callihan, so I also like that. I like when Sami Callihan gets beat. That's always fun for me. Yeah, it's got to be like tackling a giant marshmallow or a beanbag chair, as I've called them in the past. Yeah, that's what happens. Any further notes or thoughts or observations on that?
I was very pleased when they did the spot with the springboard cutter, and instead of a kick out, Moose broke it up. I liked that. Crowd definitely seemed to be into it. And it seems like Impact is trying a lot to get over new and returning teams and get them like established and over.
Seems like it.
Which is a good thing because the tag team division definitely needs a injection. Of course, the Knockouts tag team division needs an even bigger one.
Well, they need to exist.
Yeah, they kind of need.
They don't need just an injection. They need an establishment. But we'll see what happens there. Labrat says Sammy's a small butterbean. So, I would never use the word small in comparison to Sammy, unless you're talking about just his height purely, and then yes. Subculture promo next. They're like basically like, hey, remember us from England? In it? I don't know. I wasn't listening. As soon as I saw them I stopped listening to the show. I don't know what I was doing. I was probably looking up a YouTube video to watch when I saw them come on. So I didn't really hear them say anything of interest. Did you?
A little bit. They talked about how they're like, they don't just represent their own subculture. They represent all subcultures around the world and everybody who feels like they're marginalized.
They're 3 white people. So fuck off. I represent shit. We're trying to get unrepresented by 3 white people from England. Like, that's kind of what the whole world is trying to do for the past few hundred years. God damn it. Anyway, speaking of white people, Angels gets a vignette here. If you haven't had enough of him, he says something about he's a celestial now. And
wasn't he supposed to have turned babyface after defecting from the heel faction? Why is he still acting like a heel?
I think he thinks he is a babyface. He's going to make his mark. It's an X. So what, you're illiterate? Is that what you're saying? Like, is that what you mean? That's usually what people that can't write do. Like when they have to sign a paper, they write an X. So you're going to... I know what he means, though. He's talking about the X Division title because he's in Ultimate X. So that's what he's saying. I don't know. They think maybe, Brandon, maybe they think that being a babyface in 2023 is just being cool and like edgy and mysterious and kind of a dick. Maybe that's what they think a babyface is. I mean, what would you prefer to... Should Angels come out and say, well, guys, I was with those design fellas and it just wasn't for me. So I'm going to go out there and do my best. And like, it doesn't have to be that, but
I mean, he doesn't really even have to say anything. We watch the story progress and he just has to flow from that organically.
Yeah. I don't know, dude. He's given you no reasons to like him other than leaving the design. But he didn't do anything during the design to make you wish he was going to leave or to root for him or anything else. I don't know if that's 100% his fault, even though I admit to never caring about him in my life, but because
There's
what we don't need is more bald white guys with a beard in wrestling. Like there's enough of that, just like there's enough Kennys and any other things. But regardless of that, the company hasn't done him any favors or put him in any sort of direction for us to like really cheer for him or care about him.
and now that you mention it, like one of the things that could have been a point of dissension with him and the rest, and him and Diener, is he could have been doing like good things and positive things for other people, and Diener's like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah. Stop being nice. Hey, his name is Angel after all, so. Well, anyway, he's illiterate and he's a Celestial. That's what we have to take away from this. Then they do their rundown of the cards, and then they do the Aldis package, which is cool. I like this Aldis package. They used it a lot over the weekend, though. They used it multiple times. They used it in the countdown show to Slammiversary. They used it on Slammiversary. They just keep using the same Aldis package. But it was a good package. You know, I guess they filmed it and they want to get their money's worth, so they used it. But there it was. And then we end with the Deanna Open Challenge. And then we get it's the challenge is answered by Jody Threat. They have a match. Jody Threat taps to the Venus de Milo eventually. And at this point, like I wrote even down in my notes, I noted that I was very tired and I was nodding off watching this. And like after I saw the Venus, I remember seeing the Venus de Milo. I think I nodded off at certain points during the match too. You know, no slight to them, but that's just what happened. And so I was like nodding off, and then I remember seeing the Venus de Milo and seeing her tap and being like, all right, you know, that's what I expected. And then I sort of must have nodded off again, because when I woke back up, the ring was filled up and security was like doing a pull apart with Trinity and Deanna. So can you fill us in on what happened in that time, or any details or any thoughts on this whole damn closing bit?
A lot of it didn't really make a lot of sense. I think I want to say like Giselle and company ran down, the Coven ran down, Death Dolls ran down. It turned into basically a knockout, just brawl.
Yeah, it's kind of what it looked like. I just missed the running down part. Everybody was in there. I was like, huh?
And then it ended with the whole, like, it was Deanna and Trinity left by themselves in the ring. They did the whole back up, bump into each other, turn around spot. Like, oh, jeez.
It's 2023, people. Well, it's an oldie, but not necessarily a goodie.
If it's done the right way and built up and set up the right way, where both people legitimately don't know the other one is there, okay, that works. But like,
well, they always have to oversell it too.
Yes,
like
that too.
It's like there's yeah, exactly. There's no real animosity between them other than they have a match coming up, but nothing's really happened between them. So it's just like in real life, if that happened, you just turn around and be like, oh, it's you. But they have to
or if you're in the middle of a fight and you bump into somebody, first thing you're doing is like, your fists are up. You're right. You're like, oh shit, I'm ready to go again. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's just you. And then sucker puncher. Oh my God. Or not, whatever. Steve says, was at least the gummy Venus de Milo? Oh, gummy Venus. Thank you. All right. I'll always bring everything to a screeching halt for a Simpsons reference. Liz says it was too long of a match. Also, my gripe is that when the chicks do the roll up where they have someone down and their legs are over their arms, they push their opponent out of the pin. Like, what the fuck?
Oh, dude, yeah. Dudes do that too.
Yeah, everybody does that. It's just, we just don't pretend the shit is real anymore. Whether that's a function of every wrestling company not doing anything to pretend it's real, or whether people have just started doing things like this and the companies have given up. I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg situation, but it's kind of sad. That's why I appreciate those little things that I see people do. And like those things get me excited. You know what I mean? Like I get excited over little small technical details like that. And that's how I decide who's good and who's not. You know, I don't look at who can do the longest, sequences and who can flip the best or those type of things. I look at those things too, but it's those little details that the real top guys, like the Okadas and the Styleses and the Ortons and the Walters and like you see those little things that those top guys do, and those are much more interesting and entertaining to me. But I think a lot of the fans, they just get so used to it they don't even see it anymore, or they never saw it. They didn't know to look at it. I didn't know to look at it when I was just a fan, until I was actually, you know, red pilled. I didn't see those little things that make all the difference. And pretending that this stuff is, I don't know. Now everybody, the magician, it's like you can already see the bunny ears sticking out of the hat, and you can already see the handkerchief coming out of the sleeve, and you can already see all this shit, and then they do the trick and they expect you to be excited just because, I don't know. But and Liz she says she notices it more in the women's matches because more often they suck than they don't. More of the guys are good, but I don't know. It's a ratio thing because there's so many guys compared to the women. There's more women now, but yeah, I see what she's saying. Well, let's see what she says about Slammiversary. Slam-a-fucking-versary. Yeah, pal.
And unfortunately, I did not get a chance to watch it, but I did read the results. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna. That's all right. That's fine. That'll just, if anything, it'll just move things along a little bit more. But you can still react to what I tell you, and you've already seen the results. So here we go. Countdown show.
That's where my name came from.
Yeah, exactly. You knew that much. So Countdown show features Team Shaw versus the Threat Dolls. That's what I'm calling the Death Dolls with Jody Threat. What do you think? Should I get a job with Impact?
Alex Shelley would be proud of it.
All right. Courtney Spears Vidal for the win. There's not really much to say about this match.
I'm just going to keep saying it. They need to just drop the whole act and turn Shaw babyface. There's really nowhere else to go. I mean, it feels like to me the crowd is booing because they feel like they're supposed to, not like because they genuinely like generating heat.
Mm. Well, on that note,
and out of respect because of the performance,
and out of respect because of the performance. Now, I suppose I should mention that one of the news items that we talked about in the Monday Locker Room, channelattitude.com, was that Rick Steiner is booked for WrestleCon. So
yeah, I did read about that.
Mm-hmm.
And their response was basically like, he did apologize. He knows he was in the wrong. He's willing to grow and change, and he's on a zero tolerance policy. One fuck up, he's done.
Right. And that's pretty much how it should be. Anybody has their business, they run their business how they like, and it's up to them to make those decisions. So I said pretty much everybody could do everything everybody did everything they could do in this situation.
In fact, I thought Braun had the best response. He made the best response he could have when he was asked about it.
Yeah. What more can you do at that point? And what more could Rick have done? I mean, he did the thing he did, but then he apologized. And that story, which I did hear, but it got brushed under the rug because that's not as good of a story, right? Like him immediately apologizing is not a very great headline grabbing story. It's much more headline grabbing to, talk about the negative aspect of it. But if you're looking for it, you would have known that, he did what he could at the time based on those things, and that's all you can do. And then it's up to the guy. If the guy said, too late, don't accept your apology, that's his right. It's his business. It's his convention. It's his organization. He can do business how he wants. That's the truth of, how I feel about when we talk about people's rights, whatever those are. People forget human rights are made up by humans, so it's not a real thing. It's everybody that's in control. It's up to them what they do. So if he wants to bring Rick Steiner in for a convention, he doesn't even need an apology. He can do it if he wants to. He could hire any scumbag that he wants to appear at his wrestling convention, and then he'll have to deal with the consequences of it.
Yeah,
right?
like people saying, "Hey, don't go there because this is how they do business. They're terrible people." That's just how the market works.
Right. And, like it could cause some problems, but at the same time, taking personal feelings or thoughts and stuff out of it, it just seems Rick Steiner is a much bigger name than a Giselle Shaw if you're talking about a convention for wrestling. So you have to make a business decision on those type of things. So we definitely see people let personal stuff get in the way of business decisions all the time in wrestling. So it wouldn't be that shocking if he decided to go the other way, but let's see how it all plays out. That neither here nor there. The important thing about this countdown show is it featured the Digital Media Championship match between Kenny King and Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry was pretty over here. There was a "We Believe" chant, when he does his like pre-match promo thing. Like the people started chanting "We Believe" unprompted, so that's a good sign. We've seen some of these crowds not as hot for Joe Hendry as they were at the start, depending on what town they're in. So the people here were definitely into it. They got a "Stripper Kenny" chant going. So the guys had the match. He's like, Kenny King has some like looks like some Wakanda inspired gear. Like he's got like a top that kind of looks like, some ceremonial, like I don't know if you have a different name for a dashiki if it doesn't go all the way down, like a t-shirt dashiki. Like maybe that's something like that. But he's covering up his upper body, which is still funny. And then at one point in the match, he gets a Chippendales like bow tie collar thing and like starts choking Joe Hendry with it. And
that's a cool spot. I like that.
Not only did he choke him with it, but once the referee caught him choking him, he just attached it to Joe Hendry. So Joe Hendry had worked the rest of the match wearing the stripper bow tie, which led to a spot where he realized he was wearing it and he had Kenny in trouble, and he just started gyrating, so he was dancing and everything like that. A funny little spot there.
And that's a clever spot. If Kenny decided he wants to take it to Joe Hendry by putting a bow tie collar on him, Hendry would lean right into it.
Mm-hmm. So he did. Yeah, it's in character and everything. So, but anyway, I was watching this match. I'm like, well, fuck, Joe Hendry is beating the shit out of Kenny King here. It's like everything Kenny King did, like Joe Hendry had the counter for it. The only real moment of heat he got was that collar spot. But the rest of it was just him getting bounced around by Joe Hendry and selling for Joe Hendry and all this other shit. So I'm just like, well, fuck, Kenny King must, if Kenny King doesn't go over here, this is this is ridiculous. But he does go over. That's exactly what happens. He basically gets very little offense until the very end. He scoops Joe Hendry's legs and folds him up and puts his feet on the ropes. And Sheldon Jean holds his feet on the ropes out of view of the referee. And Joe Hendry is pinned, and we have a new digital media champion. So there you go. That ties into what you said earlier about, the heat being on him going into the pay-per-view. And now he got the heat put on him again this whole match, and he comes out on top. Kenny King, digital media champion. To be honest, go ahead.
I'd like to see what King can do with it. I mean, I thought Joe Hendry did a great job with it, but they didn't really. There was so much more they could have done with him as like the whole digital media thing. Like Hendry was perfect for that.
Perfect for that, and didn't really get anything out of it, I felt. That's exactly where I was going. I was like, seeing what he did with social media or digital media or things like that, not really doing a lot. So we'll have to see what Kenny King does. Unfortunately, I don't think I follow either one of those guys. So I'll have to check in on them manually to see what they've been doing.
What would be great is if, to stick it to Joe Hendry, Kenny goes back to his just for one night only, goes back to stripping and wears the belt and strips it off as like a fuck you to Joe.
Interesting. but he's self-conscious about his titties, so he shouldn't be self-conscious. They're very nice titties. Lab Rat says he didn't believe. That's probably why Joe Henry lost. They were testing believe on Lab Rat, and it didn't work. We need a new believe formula. All right, so now we're at the main Slammiversary card, and we're going to open with Ultimate X. Kushida, okay, versus Alan Angels, versus Gresham, versus Kevin Knight, versus Speedball, versus a surprise entrant. Jake Something is back. Remember Jake Something? He's back.
Yep.
In Jake Something form. He's in great shape, which means that I'm immediately concerned about his heart. That's when I see somebody in a good shape, I immediately start worrying and watching their sweat levels, like Jonathan Gresham. Like I'm like, oh, let's monitor this, guys. Let's monitor this. But for now, he's in great shape. Yeah. So this is the Ultimate X match. You know how this goes. Even more so than normal. I felt like most of the match was like 4 or 5 guys laying at ringside waiting to get knocked back down by a flying body. Like I felt like that was most of this whole match. It always seemed like somebody was climbing up something and then like guys were standing up outside and getting knocked back down. Like it was almost comical the way the pace of it went.
Like there's ways you can build those kind of spots and add drama and intrigue to them.
Well, these guys don't know it. Angels. Okay, this match was very Angels focused. I think he really wanted to show off, or they wanted to show off what he could do, with mixed results. So like he tried a double Spanish fly on these guys. I forget which ones. It doesn't matter. I didn't write it down, but he did a double Spanish fly, and he slipped on the rope. So when they landed, it looked like those guys gave him a double DDT. It's almost like he spiked himself on the landing, and they took the bumps on their back like they're supposed to, but he ended up vertical. So it kind of looked like they gave him a double DDT off the top, but it was clearly supposed to be a Spanish fly. So he has to get up and act like he did something, even though he didn't. It looked like he took the worst of it. Shit like that.
And that's when you got to have workers who are smart enough and experienced enough to call an audible and go, fuck it, go from there.
They probably didn't even see it. To be honest. And again, depending on the 2 guys, because I didn't write them down, but they may not have even known better. Mike Bailey moonsaulted off the truss to the guys on the floor. So that was fucking dangerous.
And why would you do that when you're about to win the match?
Oh, he wasn't about to win the match. He climbed up that truss specifically to leap on guys. Because goddamn it. Because that was the spot. And then Angels later on, guys were like trying to go get the X, and Angels hit him in the balls. Like he actually jumped from the top rope out to the middle of the ring to give a low blow to Jake Something, which at first I thought it was a botch, but then I was like, no, they meant to do that. I missed what it was. It was a low blow.
Springboard low blow.
It was great. Not even a springboard. He just fucking climbed up in the corner and jumped off the buckle. Anyway, it was funny. Go back and check it out if you guys want. It's pretty good. He hit somebody else in the balls. But Kushida climbs out, using he hooks his feet over the rope, and climbs like that. I did that once in a match. It was pretty funny because the gimmick was Army of 2, right? So I was trying to find ways to work in gimmick military stuff in the match. So what I did was I did that rope crawl. Like I crawled out to the middle, like I was on the apron and I crawled out to the middle to distract the referee. And then the referee went and it's like, hey, what are you doing? Get back over there. And then my partner cheated and then we got the heat from there. So Kushida did that, climbed out. Somebody tried to get him off, but he fought him off and Kushida pulled the X down. So Kushida's got a shot. So as it stands at this point, with Chris Sabin as the X Division champion and Kushida being the number 1 contender, now you got some intrigue because you got Time Machine, facing off against each other. And we know Kushida's not going to be busy because the G1's going on right now. So that's all heavyweights. They're not going to have any of the juniors on this tour for the next few weeks. So Kushida's freed up to be back here and doing stuff. which again, that would have also tied into, now we look at this title picture. They gave that belt to Macklin.
Ooh, or what about this? What if they put the belt? What if Kushida becomes the X Division champion, and that creates the tension between him and Sabin and Shelley?
Yeah, I mean, of course. So you've already got the tension going into the match, and then if he wins it, there's even, well, no, he didn't win. He can't do that because I forgot we already went ahead with something else. So the point is, if they had just had a little foresight, Kushida could have been used in a couple of different ways here. I mean, he could have been coming, for all we know, he could have been coming into this match as the Impact champion, based on what they had done. But whatever. We'll see what happens here. You'll see how it goes. Next is Kenny. Oh, and just to add, Society Reviews says Ultimate X used to be special because they were the only ones on the card doing this style, which is true. But now everybody just does everything, so who cares, right? Kenny with Gia, no music underneath. Gia's mic is a 1940s radio, apparently, because it's just like, it couldn't be an Impact pay-per-view without audio issues, could it? Like, it couldn't, right? That's part of the gimmick. But Kenny does a good social media related promo. Like, the promo that he cuts has to do, he ties social media in as the digital media champion. He says something like, he said, I think, what do you call it? He called Alex Shelley. He's like, you're like MySpace. You had a spark at the start, but now you're garbage. So shit like that. That was pretty good. Yeah. So good promo from Kenny King. You can always count on that, at least. Oh, Society says Impact's audio is about as reliable as Bailey's knees. Uncalled for. You leave Bailey's knees alone. She's trying her best carrying the company, damn it. So we get a package, and then it's...
That's what she has her booty for.
That's right. She was putting it on her back instead of her butt. She could have carried it easier if she put it on her butt. Masha and Kelly versus the Coven for the Knockouts Tag Team Championships. I just wrote down, like, I'm just watching this match, and I'm just like, dude, when Masha's in the ring, it's just a different gear altogether. Like, she's always doing, I don't approve of her doing all these death matches and garbage matches and stuff like she does, but what she is doing is she's getting in the ring with dudes most of the time. Yeah. And, sorry, it's just going to be different. You're getting different reps when you're in there with guys. And looks like, I know that I'm setting myself up for several jokes about her, but she looks like a guy in there. You know what I mean? The way she moves, the speed. Her shit looks good.
I think it kind of, if she's the only knockout that's doing that, I think she works for her. It makes her stand out and look different.
Yeah. I think she's kind of become less special, not only because they're not using her like they did when she first came in. How often could that last anyway, really?
True.
But even her look was like, she looked more like Zoya the Destroyer from Glow. And now she just looks like a random wrestling chick. Doesn't look that, it doesn't look that striking on the surface anymore, but she could still fucking go. And she's kind of wasting her talents here with this shallow talent pool. So, nonetheless, speaking of shallow talent pool, the camera missed the finish on this. Because they wanted to do a thing where Killer Kelly does a dive to take out the Kylan King, I guess, on the outside, take her out of the equation, and Masha's hitting the snowplow on Taylor inside the ring, but they missed the snowplow and got the dive, and then they come back and Masha's covering her, and that's it. So you missed the finish. Great job, truck monkeys. So yeah, she works doing that, unlike when Grace did it. Liz says, talking about Masha. Yeah, Jordan Grace she's just built like a house, but she still works like a girl, and her shit looks phony for the most part. Don't like her. Glad she's gone. But anyway, new champs. So we got the sexy chain girls champs. Now we just don't have a division to challenge them. But
Yep.
Okay match. Um, then we get a package, and we get Bully and Diener. Okay, I guess he's accepted Diener versus Scott D'Amore and his partner, Eric Young.
Eric Young.
Eric Young. Yeah, that's basically my thoughts.
I mean, at least it's somebody who has history with both Scott and Diener. So, yeah, but we watched him get stabbed to death.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. There was no body. There was no body.
They turned the camera off before we saw the breath leave his corpse, alleged corpse. In fact, we never even saw the knife go in. So. All right, this is fucking dumb. But who else is it going to be, really? And the fact that it's Eric Young and Diener's the partner and all this other stuff makes me wonder if it's like... And the fact that, Macklin had that mysterious injury that was undisclosed. And the fact that nobody probably wanted to see PCO in a match again makes you wonder if, like, this wasn't always the plan. Like, as soon as they figured out they were going to bring back Eric Young, they were like, oh, yeah, Steve Macklin, you're hurt now. But I'm not necessarily saying they went that far, but, it is questionable. They said he's got a groin injury, though. They've now said that Steve Macklin has a groin injury and won't require surgery. But the problem with that is it takes a long time for a groin injury to heal because you're always using your groin in daily life. Every time you move your leg at all, your groin's involved, so it's really hard to heal a groin injury. Who knows how long he's going to be out. And he's probably going to try to come back too early, and he's probably going to have to be continually working with it. So, but yeah, Eric Young. So Eric Young's face to face with his murderer, and I was like, okay, what are they going to do here? Because we already talked about the last time that we had somebody involved with the design, and I was like, here's a blood feud where we hate each other and everything, and we're going to do tackle headlock, like that kind of shit. And what they did was Diener tagged Bully in immediately. So I was like, okay, well, at least they avoided that, having to lock up in a wrestling match with a guy that killed you. So they did that. But, I mean, they didn't do anything else amazing throughout this whole thing. Darren McCarty was there. He's a special guest enforcer. Eventually, he becomes the actual referee in the match. They had the guy from Team Canada, A1. I don't remember that guy at all. I'm sorry. I'm sure he was a big part of Team Canada. Just forgot. And he gets involved at some point. Blah, 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 blah. Young eventually pins Diener. So there you go. There's your closure. Scott D'Amore, I'm sure everyone was wondering about Scott D'Amore since we found out he was the greatest, most underappreciated wrestler since Alex Shelley. And he looked good in there. Everything he did was fine. He is fat and out of shape, but he moved pretty well. So, there was that. I don't remember what young Scott D'Amore wrestled like, so I can't compare it, but he didn't embarrass himself or anything for what I saw.
He at least put the effort in to get himself in shape and do the best job that he could, and that has to be commended.
Yeah. But yeah, there it was. It was like, this was way too hyped up beforehand because, again, you poured battery acid down a man's throat and set him on fire, and then our payoff is a tag team match. Just not even a no rules tag team match or a Texas Tornado match just tag team match. So kind of anticlimactic, but whatever. Who cares? Who cares? I don't have the energy to care and cut a promo on him for this or even get into detail of why this was dumb. So I don't know. Society Review says, remember Sandy? Remember when they were a thing? Yes, I didn't. And I would point to one of the best matches in NXT history was actually Roderick Strong versus Eric Young from one of those takeovers. If you Google it, if you want to see a good match and how to do a match like in that style, in that era, on the night when Pete Dunne versus Tyler Bate got all this accolades and 5 stars in the Wrestling Observer and all this other bullshit, that match sucked. And if you want to see an actual good match on the same exact card that opened the show and kicked it off hot, and the crowd was into it, and they basically had what I would consider to be a perfect match in today's modern style, check out Eric Young versus Roderick Strong from NXT TakeOver. I'm sorry, I forget the year, I forget the city, but if you Google it, you'll find it. Where are we at? Aldis promo. Yeah, he cuts a promo here. It's Nick Aldis, so it's good. Package. Okay. Yeah. Rush versus Sabin for the X Division title. So, what's the main event? That'll be the easiest way. The easiest way to find it is to type in Roderick Strong versus Eric Young, because they only had that one match probably ever in their lives. Okay, so Rush versus Sabin for the X Division title. Leo jump-started this match with a dive that caused the ref and the trainer to check on Chris Sabin. So he decides for once in his life to sell something here. There was nothing wrong with the dive. Like, this is all part of the plan. Like, they did this on purpose. So yeah, they do this whole thing. Like, is he going to start? So after Chris Sabin gets up and shoves the trainer away, he stumbles back into the ring, and then they ring the bell, and Leo hits him with a drop kick, like a 1-footed running drop kick. And then he hits him with one of those weird fancy spinning kicks from the ground that he does. Kind of looks like the, what do they call that move? I don't know. Who cares? Doesn't matter. It was a fancy kick. I'll just call it a fancy kick. And then he hits the final hour, his finishing move. And of course, Chris Sabin has to kick out of that, just once to show he's really, really tough and strong. And then Leo Rush stares at him and then just climbs back up and hits it again and pins him. And we have a new X Division champion after a minute and a half of actual bell. Probably the whole thing probably took 6-7 minutes with entrances. They're doing a thing here. They want a Leo Rush to get a strong win. So there you go. I'll take it. Anything where I just don't have to watch a whole Chris Sabin match again is great. So,
and I like how they did that. I mean, it's different, and you can't have every match on the show being like a long drawn out match. You got to have some variety, and this is different.
Right. And the only problem with this is you see again, a man was set on fire, but granted, he's not here on the show. It's not like if PCO was on this show, it'd still be believable because he's an undead Frankenstein or whatever. So it's still like, you could see how if with a couple weeks to recover, he'd be able to make it. But Chris Sabin, though, like selling a dive, like how many dives do we see? Leo Rush has one of the best dives in wrestling because he looks like he's fucking coming at you like a missile. Unfortunately, he does have the body of a 12-year-old boy, but I'm just saying, like, just like Darby Allin, when he runs into you, he fucking runs into you. So it's somewhat believable. I mean, you usually hear the smack of it and you see it, and it's still relatively safe as a dive can be, but it just looks good, So it was a good dive to sell, but it's like, considering the amount of stuff that's not sold on a standard Impact show or any wrestling show, it's just weird that they would choose this to be the thing that puts Chris Sabin out of commission. Again, I'm for it in a bygone era, but in this era now, it stands out for not making sense. I mean, do you know what I mean by that?
Definitely.
It'd be great. You would expect it to be something like, I don't know, just for an example, like if the guy was like, let's say Leo Rush was the champion and Chris Sabin wanted to jumpstart the match and dive on him, and Leo Rush had the belt and he just held it up and Chris Sabin ran his face into it, diving at him, like then you could see that would be like a thing. Oh, let's sell this injury. But just a regular dive. So, all right. Well, the point is, I guess we can learn the lesson that if you sell anything, it can be believable, I guess. Mm-hmm. So anyway, afterwards, Gia asks Alex Shelley backstage if, she's like, what are your thoughts on what just happened? Is the machine gun era coming to an end? That's what she asked. And then he walks off without answering like he should. Don't dignify that with a response, Alex. All right, they show Deanna and Trin getting ready. And then we get a 4-way for the tag titles. It's ABC versus the MPWG versus Swanahan versus Subculture. And after 10 minutes of everything ever, the Rascals interfere. And fucking Subculture pins Brian Myers to become the new Impact Tag Team Champions. Subculture.
I did think it was a little bit odd they gave them. I know. It just felt like that might be where they're going because they gave them a little bit more in that promo to explain themselves rather than just like, "Hey, we're here to win."
Fuck that. Fuck Subculture. I don't want to see these guys.
I agree. They should just be there to kind of like, hey, we need somebody to fill the spot on the card.
This was Moose and Myers' match to win. They look like the kindergarten teacher and the teacher's assistant in a classroom full of kids in this fucking match. These two towering, like even Brian Myers is towering over these guys. And Moose towers over Brian Myers. So it's like, it looked like them again, it looked like Kindergarten Cop. It's shut up.
There's like a lot more material you can get out of Moose and Myers as the tag team champions.
Yes. Like them just standing there looking cool with belts. I mean, again, Myers not as cool. Definitely doesn't look cool. And you see that in the entrances. It's reflected in the entrances. It's like the Moose comes out looking like a megastar in his entrance. And then the separate entrance that his tag team partner gets, Myers just walks out and he looks like the guy with the best gear on the indie show in the Guard Armory. Like that's basically what it looks like here. I definitely would be like, if I was Brian Myers, I'd be like, can I go out first? Because I'm going to get shown up by your entrance. Anyway, but whatever. We don't have to worry about that because it's Subculture now. Subculture. These guys have to, get on each other's shoulders and wear a trench coat to get into an R-rated movie.
I think we all remember those cartoons. In fact, I'm pretty sure, wasn't that they did that in the Little Rascals movie?
Probably did. Apparently, I'm gonna have to go back and watch this Little Rascals movie because I need to see where Impact's getting all their shit from. Not that they actually did this. That was something I made up as a joke. But
dear Darla, I hate your stinking guts.
Yep. Get me, Darla. All right. Package. Then Kaz versus Fat Eddie with wives. So I wrote down that it's nice that we get a singles match after all this. This is like the first regular singles match since the fucking Digital Media Championship match on the kickoff show. So it's nice that we just get, okay, here's a singles match between two guys and there's no crazy stipulations, even though we have wives out here. It's just a match. And I just wish that I cared about these guys or this angle at all. I don't. I'm sorry. it's only a little bit those guys' fault. But I don't care. I just don't care. I'm sure I could have enjoyed this in a different time and a different setting. But as things are, I didn't. It was a match. It was fine. They worked hard. Anyway, they do a thing where the ref is, a ref bump of some kind, and then Kenny plays a part. The kendo stick hits him with the kendo stick and hits him with a Boston Knee Party, and now Eddie has won the best of 3 with Frankie Kazarian. So your winner, Fat Eddie. There you go. Any thoughts on that? Did the right guy win?
It's tough to care. It really is tough to care about that.
Isn't it? Guys, does anybody in the chat care? Just type it if you care. You don't even have to type if you don't care. All right, package.
Total package.
Yep. Remember when they could only call him Total Package and they weren't allowed to say Lex Luger, and like Chris Cruz or somebody would be like, he'd be like, Luger, sorry, Package, on commentary. That was funny. It's Trinity versus Deonna for the Knockouts title. Trinity did not look as sharp in this match for whatever reason. I'm not really sure. Maybe it was a couple week layoff of not actually having any matches that did it. It's tough. Even missing 1 week in wrestling, like it'll wear you out. You lose some of your wind, coordination, callousing. Just didn't look as sharp as she has in the past. Not that she was ever like she wasn't no Masha Slamovich, at any point in her career, but she always, from an athletic standpoint, usually brought it.
I've been really liking Deonna's work. The way she, like, her match with Jody, I thought was very good. She did a great job carrying Jody.
Did she? Okay. Yeah. So Trinity had some tributes to her husband in this match. She did like a Samoan throat thrust, and she did a Samoan drop and some other Samoan things. One thing I definitely didn't like, they did a Queen's Gambit on the apron, and she rolled Trinity in, and Trinity kicked out. I didn't like it.
Nope.
Just don't do it.
Don't do that. Or if you are going to, foot on the rope.
Yeah,
which I know is more heelish, but it shouldn't be done in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, if you're pile driving somebody on the apron, that's a heel move. Like, let's face it. You're trying to cripple. You're basically saying, I don't care if you ever walk again. So here we go.
That should be a stretcher job.
Yeah. So what I would do if we were doing that spot, if she was like, please, please, please let me hit my Queen's Gambit on the apron. I love it so much. It's my favorite thing. Just please. Then I would say, okay, well, I'm going to roll off the apron and work a 10 count. And I'll look like a hero for barely struggling to get in at 10. But the problem is,
you should be knocked out.
And you're going over. Because guess what? After she kicks out of the apron's Queen's Gambit, they eventually get into another sequence where Trinity's back on top. She hits the Starstruck. She gets an extra leg capture, and Deonna's forced to tap out. So your new Knockouts champion after the apron pile driver is Trinity. Yay. Yay. We all knew this was coming.
Yep.
We could have done without an apron pile driver, though, if we're going to do this. Just a thought. Even the threat of something. Like, she goes for it, doesn't hit it. Like, if she picks her up, Well, the ropes are right there. So Trinity just grabs one of the ropes and keeps herself from getting fully picked up on the pile driver. But at least you could see that Deonna had the intent. Like, if you tell the story in the match, you can get a lot of things to work. But that's the problem. You hear people say, tell a story in the ring. You hear people say that all the time. A lot of people don't know what that means. They just say it because it sounds like good, or it sounds like something they've heard before. I've heard people say, tell a story in the ring. What does that mean? Well, the story can be, Deonna's getting frustrated not being able to beat Trinity. And if it takes a pile driver on the apron to finally get this woman to stay down, if you tell that story through repeated near falls building up to this, and then you find yourself on the apron, and then you hit the pile driver or go for a pile driver, that's basically saying, fuck, I need to pull out all the stops to beat this person. Instead, people do moves like this just because they felt like doing it at that point in the match with no real reason, especially in a story where these, like, the women have had like a little bit of a pull apart, but nothing serious. And they've been pretty cordial to each other leading up to the match. So it's not like you'd want to cripple somebody, but a pile driver on the apron for anybody in wrestling, forget it. Women, men, AEW, WWE, if you're pile driving somebody on the apron, that should mean in the world of pro wrestling, in the kayfabe world of pro wrestling, that should mean I no longer care about this person's health, well-being, family, financial success, or anything. I'm trying to end their career, and it should be treated as such. And anybody that survives it should be looked at as a hero for surviving it. Instead, it's just that spot in the match now.
Like you want to get apron bumps over, make them do stuff like that.
Right. So nobody knows how to do anything anymore. Like almost nobody. So it's very simple. If you're telling the story that Deonna's frustrated and not able to put away her opponent, she goes for a pile driver on the apron, Trinity blocks it, grabs the ropes, holds on to the ropes, but now at least you've seen A, Deonna's desperate to beat this chick, and B, the other chick is desperate to not get crippled. So it's that simple. And if you tell the story right, the crowd can get into that moment. Because if Deonna's struggling to try to pick her up and Trinity's not letting her, then you're telling that story within a story. Like, can she get her up? Can she get her to break her grip on the ropes? Is the referee going to step in and be like, stop what you're doing? Will that give Trinity the moment she needs to recover? It's so simple. It's so simple. But they don't even know how to work anymore. They just know how to do what they planned in the back. So it's very unfortunate. Nonetheless, they tried their best. They had a nice match. Trinity wins. Congratulations. This could have been a lot better, though, I think.
Man, like, listening to that talk just reminds me of this one time. I forgot the name of the guy, but it was at a time I was at an IWA Mid-South show, and he was like complaining in the back saying, if you knew how to work, you wouldn't have to memorize 22 spots.
Yes. Oh, man. Let me tell you something, brother. I can't remember shit. Like, it's a problem. Like, I have short-term memory. Anybody that's watched me play video games on Twitch and watch me try to navigate like a map or whatever knows that I forget where I've been and what I've been doing the past 30 seconds. I'm constantly looking at the map. Like, did I go in this door already? Like, I don't remember shit like that. I have a good long-term memory. My short-term memory is fucked. So when I go out there in the match, I'm probably not going to remember the shit. And here's another thing. You hear people talk about being blown up, right? You've been blown up in the ring, right, Brandon?
Oh, yes.
When you get blown up, it's not just that you're tired. You forget what you were supposed to do. Like, it affects your mental. Like, if you blow up, you forget the spot that's coming next. You'll make a mistake. You're supposed to feed over to this corner, but you feed over to the middle or something. It's just like you don't like being blown up is more than just physically exhausting. It makes you forget everything. And it's different than just being tired. Like, it's not, being blown up isn't just like, oh, I'm tired, but man, if I just had a little more energy. No, it's totally different. So, yeah, it affects all that stuff. So, I mean, if you know how to work, that won't matter because you'll be able to get to any point you want to get to from any point that you're at. right? But if you have the spots that you were trying to remember because they're all tied to each other, because you laid this out in a way where everything leads into something else, then it's like a Jenga tower. You take one block out, the whole thing might fall down, you know? So being able to work prevents that, because you can always, if you know your basic match layout and structure from a skeletal structure standpoint, then you can fill it in any way you want. But anyway, too late. We're past all that. So we get a package again, and then it's Aldis versus Shelley for the Impact title. These guys are covered in glitter thanks to Trinity. So we're talking about telling stories in the ring. Trying to out-heel each other could be a story that you could tell in this match, because they were clearly trying to do it, but that wasn't the story. It's just how it ended up. Like, Alex Shelley's being a heel. I don't know if he knows he is, or if he has a plan for it, but he's doing it. But Nick Aldis is not being a babyface. When it's his turn, he's being a heel. He's carrying himself like a heel. So I don't know. It was very, very strange match. I'm not sure what they were trying to get across, but I do think that there's a certain match they could have had, and this goes back to being able to work, you know. There's a certain match that you could have had where you're telling the story that Nick Aldis is the heel and Alex Shelley is just trying to match what Aldis is doing, you know, like just to survive. Like, if he's going to cheat, then I'm going to fucking cheat. You know, if that's the story you want to tell, you can get a good story out of that and have a good match with that. Instead, it was just like, okay, it's my turn, I'm going to do this shit. Okay, it's your turn, I'm going to do this shit. That's what it felt like to me anyway. Not that it was bad, but it's just not ideal, I would say. Or maybe it is ideal. I don't know. Maybe I'm just such a genius on such a level that I can continue to see these things at a different plane of existence than everybody else. I'm not giving myself that much credit, but maybe I'm underestimating myself. Maybe I'm just a prodigy and a genius, and these guys are just not that good at it. I have no idea. But the truth is, I would have liked to see a different match than these guys, especially the finish. Now, the finish, genius or not, it doesn't take a genius to see how this was fucked up. So the finish is, regardless how they get to it, the last thing that happens in the match is the belt, the championship belt, gets introduced into the match, of course, right? Nick Aldis, I think, goes and gets it. So he gets a DDT on the belt from Shelley. Then Shelley super kicks him. And then he hits him with the shell shock and pins him. 1, 2, 3. That's your finishing sequence. So it's 1, 2, 3 moves. And here's why this doesn't make sense. Because Aldis couldn't properly sell any of these moves because they came in rapid sequence. So he takes a DDT on the belt. Then he got to get up because he's got to feed for a super kick. So fuck the belt DDT. Like, just get up and take a super kick now. So he takes a super kick. Shelley hits him with a super kick and he takes a bump. But he immediately gets back up because now I got to take the finish. He took a bump because he was selling it right, but then he remembered, oh yeah, I got to take the next move. I shouldn't be selling this like this. So he has to immediately get up off a super kick and take this guy's finish. So it looked like absolute dog shit to me. Even if you were going to go with any of this, it should have been, well, first of all, the ref shouldn't have counted the pin if you DDT'd this guy on the belt. Like that, he should have said, nope, no pin. But if you were going to super kick him into a finish, he should have bounced off the rope then. Like, he should have took the super kick and like fell against the rope like he was unconscious and then bounced back into the finish. You don't take a flat back bump, then just sit up and get up and take a guy's finish. You're not selling the super kick at all, which I know people don't do, but that's what I'm saying. Nick Aldis, I swear to God, if I know anything about wrestling at all, I'm almost sure that Nick Aldis had to be talked into this. Like he had to be like they had to probably argue about it, and they had to go to Demore about it, and Alex Shelley like he doesn't want to do my finish sequence. Like I just see that something like that happening. I can't imagine Aldis in his right mind agreeing to this just as is. He would have had to. He had to have been coerced into it or just acquiesce to it. So, yeah. I'm gonna lay this at Shelley's feet that he laid out this finish, and it was probably a flex, you know, like I'm the one that has a friend that runs this company, and I'm the one that's the champion, and you're the visiting guy, and you're gonna take the finish that I want. It's basically, I could be wrong. I mean, he is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and everybody loves him.
Ooh. I am actually reading, something that Envy Hitman said. Nick Aldis has already left Impact.
Then it makes even more sense. Oh, you're leaving Impact already? Then fuck you. I'm going to hit you with a stupid finish.
And they could have, easy fix to that is Shelley hits that DDT on the thing, goes for the cover, 1-2 kick out, or the ref doesn't, like you said, he doesn't count it. So Shelley gets that sets up for the super kick, duck, dip. He always goes to hit something. Shelley gets out of it, super kick, going to the finish.
Yep. Very simple. Could have done it. Didn't do it. Looked stupid. This was like, it was bad. So he probably already knew.
Yeah, I mean, and then it makes sense. Like, I'm not going to be here anyway, so fuck it.
Well, great job. Great job, everybody. So there you go. Breaking news. I guess I didn't catch that. I didn't see that posted anywhere. But so Nick Aldis is leaving and somebody's returning because this shit goes on way too long. Like I can see Alex Shelley celebrating at the end of the show like way more than he needed to. So I'm like, all right, somebody's coming out. I'm looking at the time left. I'm like, there's 2 minutes left. Somebody's coming out. And that somebody is Josh Alexander, the walking weapon. He comes out dressed like a regular dude in a t-shirt and jeans. And he says, I'm back. And then leaves. Or they go off the air, whatever. So there's Slammiversary for you guys.
Well, at least they brought it. Yeah, exactly, Darkseid. Exactly. Pin me, pay me, goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, he didn't do the Austin Aries.
Very true.
Which we haven't seen Austin Aries since that, so it just goes to show you, don't spit on the business or you'll get blackballed.
What now? I'm wondering though, is that supposed to actually lead to something, or is that just him going into business for himself?
What? The Austin Aries thing?
Yeah.
No, I'm sure he just did that on his own. Because it never led to anything and he's been blackballed. So I mean, you kind of just got to look at the history, right? All right. So let's look at this here.
It looks like WWE has interest in Aldis as a producer.
Of course they do.
Well,
they should have interest in him for anything that they could get him to do. Because why wouldn't you want a guy like this? Other than, you're just Bruce Pritchard just isn't going to admit that he's wrong. That's basically it. He's just going to stick to his fucking guns. Let's see what this article says. Aldis reportedly faced returning Impact star Eric Young at last night's taping. So there you go. Aldis seemingly is done working with the promotion after a stint with the company earlier in his career and a handful of guest appearances over the years. Also made a major return in April. Yada 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 and yada. Wait.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
And Zicky Dice too. They're saying.
Huh. I did see that too.
Now, this is from PW Insider Elite.
Oh, so is that the one that doesn't put malware on your computer when you go visit their website?
I'm not sure because I'm never going to go there, but I believe, isn't Mike Johnson PW Insider?
Yes, him and Dave Scherer.
Okay, those guys are funny. So there you go. Yeah. So seemingly done for the time being. So that's meh. All right. Well, one less reason to enjoy Impact. Great job, guys. But I'm sure if that's the case, then that's always what it was. It was always a short-term deal. If he has something lined up with WWE, they probably gave him a start date. So he's like, okay, well, in the meantime, I can stay busy here. Perhaps that's what it was. Who knows? I'm only speculating on that, just like everybody else seems to. So yeah, there you go. Slammiversary. It was a show. I didn't really hate it, but I also really wasn't that into it. Some head scratching decisions. I would like to say I give them the benefit of the doubt and see where they're going, but how long have we been reviewing Impact together? Has giving them the benefit of the doubt ever paid off for us?
Nah.
Not once, right? Even when Moose wins the belt. Still didn't really pay off for us. So...
And anything that good came out of that, well, I guarantee was all Moose.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe one day they'll realize that there's only one thing that they can do, and even that's not guaranteed to save them. But nonetheless, we'll see what the fallout of Slammiversary is with our next episode review, and we'll see what they do with Eric Young, who obviously we know is going to be beating Nick Aldis at some point. And we'll see what they do with all these new champions, because everybody except for Alex Shelley pretty much lost their belt on this show. So that's an interesting choice. Yeah. So please look forward to that. But it's time for us to look forward to getting out of here. I am sweating. I don't know if it's coming through on camera, but beads of sweat are forming like all my forearms. Just running down my head. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's glistening there. It is. I am cooking. So we got to wrap this up so I can breathe again. But Brandon, where can the people follow you while you're still alive?
As always, you can follow me at Twitter at TransArchistTia, as well as twitch.tv/MissTia the Transarchist. And then you also got our Substack at HMG Brandon. Whoop whoop.
That's right. With the Substack, you can follow along with Punching Up Impact, and you can see what might have been, should have been, could have been.
Maybe.
Yeah. As for me, at Opinion Haver on all your favorite social media platforms and the ones that you hate. I did make a Threads account just to have the name. And I signed up for Blue Sky too, just to steal that name. But that's invitation only at this current point. So as soon as they let me in with that email, Opinion Haver will be sat on, taken, and never used. And anything else in that, I probably don't need to be associated with. So at Opinion Haver everywhere, you'll know it's me because I've got the little Gun Haver logo on there from the Cheat Commandos. That's how you'll know it's me and not a pretender. You could follow me on. You can see me on the Next Level Wrestling Review with Big Ray Hernandez every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. We talk about NXT and try to do the best we can with that. It sucks, but for a different reason than Impact. Impact is much closer to getting professional wrestling done than NXT. NXT is like if Hannah Montana had a ring in it. But other than that, you can find me sometimes on the PWC network. I help those guys out when I can, whether it's a Monday Night Machismo Thursday edition or anything else. I turn those guys down sometimes too. Like when they wanted me to review Forbidden Door, and I was like, I don't feel like talking about this shit. So check me out there. Where else can you find me? Monday Locker Room, starting to be semi-regular on Monday Locker Room. I'm just basically in my mind, I'm just keeping the seat warm for whenever RBV wants to come back, but I'm starting to think he likes not waking up early to do the Monday Locker Room. So maybe I'll be a little more permanent there. But anyway, Ben and I have a fun time talking about the current goings on in the world of professional wrestling. And if I do say so myself, I thought we had a really fun show today, despite Spectrum's interference of trying to add their name to the list of conspirators against Bin Hameen. Spectrum is probably at the top of the list. I suggest getting off of Wi-Fi, but that's just me. You'll always see me plugged in with Ethernet, baby. What else? Before I forget, it's G1 season. And as you know, everybody knows that New Japan Pro Wrestling is the greatest wrestling company in the world. So if you want to see what they're all about, if you go to New Japan Pro Wrestling World, njpwworld.com, night 1 and I think night 2 are both free. So you can just watch them, just straight up watch them. It's pretty cool. So check that out if you've been meaning to and haven't had a chance. Totally free, night 1 and night 2, or just night 1. Either way, check it out. Let's see. Wrestling with Rip Rogers Q&A every Friday. Concrete, unless it's not. They just had Nick Dinsmore just popped up. Like, they just sent in a link to Nick Dinsmore, and he jumped in from a hotel room somewhere and was telling great stories and answering fan questions, and it was just a good episode. So you never know who might show up on Wrestling with Rip Rogers. Even me. I may return to the show at any time. So be prepared for that. And then, of course, Stevie Richards. Got to put over Stevie Richards, the Patreon. He's doing match breakdowns. He just put up a breakdown on Patreon of, I guess it was Taya Valkyrie and Toni Storm from Battle of the Belts, which he says is one of the best women's matches he's seen in a long time. I have not got a chance to watch that match or his breakdown yet, but I will be doing so very soon. And on YouTube, he just put up a new free video, which was, I forget what it was about. I'm sorry. But check out, he's got Stevie Richards Wrestling, Stevie Richards Pro Wrestling, I think on YouTube is a separate channel, because he doesn't want to get anything demonetized or struck down because of, how WWE is about showing some of their footage and stuff like that. So he's got to have a separate channel. He doesn't want his channel attacked for that. So check that out. Check out all the stuff he's doing on his own channel. Check out the Big Fitness Show. Just check out Stevie Richards. He's doing a lot of stuff. And with that being said, we've done a lot of stuff. We talked about a lot of stuff. My voice is cracking like Peter Brady. And so for Brandon, I'm the vet, and I don't have a sign-off line.